Our next speaker is Rachael Lehman, professor here at the Community College of Denver. Professor Lehman has also been appointed to Colorado's Community Advisory Board for the Colorado Department of Public Health and the Environment, is a tireless advocate for students, for educators, for the empowerment of the voices of those who live on the fringe and on the margin, and is committed to acting from love, though that is a personal observation from my experience with her. So thank you.
Welcome, everybody. Nice to see you. So the first thing that I want to do before we get started is to do a land acknowledgement and to think about land. And when we're talking about land use, we absolutely need to acknowledge who was here originally. And the original peoples of Colorado are Apache, Cheyenne, Ute, Comanche nations, and the Kiowa, Pueblo, Shoshone, Arapaho, and Navajo tribes. This is a really valuable resource right here that I have, and you have a QR code, and y'all are going to get this slide deck, so you'll be able to do it yourselves. But if you see over to the left, there's a picture of all of the original peoples of the North American area, and then over to the right is the Colorado state. And I want you all just to kind of look at how beautiful it is, first and foremost, and how it isn't, there aren't lines, there aren't sharp lines, are there? There's literally, it's all collaborative and cooperative. It sort of blends into each other. And so that was something that I thought was really kind of striking when I first saw this map. Okay, so the first thing that I want to do is to thank Tim Camarillo. You want to raise your hand? He's back there. He is a research assistant for the Colorado Center for Sustainable Urbanism and an MBA candidate at the CU Denver Business School. He helped me with compiling a lot of these maps, and so I just wanted to shout him out before we get started. I also wanted to just express to you in public, I know I've never said this in such a big group before, but I'm a cartophile. You think... I love maps. So that's what we're going to look at, is a bunch of maps. But the thing that I really want you all to think about is that these maps tell a story. Most importantly, each one of these square inches that you see on this screen, there's a story to tell. Now, I put a map. I wanted everybody to go ahead and grab one on your table. You should have one. And so this is going to be useful as we kind of move through this presentation, because some of these maps, they don't have actual counties, and I want you to be able to know what county we're talking about or what location. And so I also want to just start with, you have counties and cities, and then we are in this big country, the United States of America. We still are a democracy, the last time that I looked at our pamphlet for the country. But right now, so what I want you to be mindful of is that in every single county, every single city, you have elected officials. And there are layers and layers and layers of people, decision makers, for the land that you stand on, that you go to school at, your kids go to school at. And so there's, for every single person, for me, for instance, there's 50 people that I have either elected or not elected who are making decisions about my life every single day. And so that is a lot, there's a lot of people there that I don't even know about. But they're deciding where to place things and how to place them. And so it's really important to I want you to think about this before we move on. This is a blank map. Nothing's been done to it. Imagine if we could just start thinking about this as sort of like a vision board, instead of all of the, you're going to see everything that's on it right now. But what if the map became sort of a vision board and you're like, oh, I would like to see that in that part of the state. I would like to see that in my city, on my block. Instead of thinking in terms of, well, what's already there and what do I have to fight against, right? If we could kind of peel back those layers and think in terms of what do I want? What's the possibilities? And so the blank map kind of gives me a kind of permission to vision a little bit more. Okay. Zip codes determine outcomes. This is the whole truth right here. And how do zip codes determine outcomes? Because there are the way that we choose to use the land. And that's very much bound to your zip code. And again, if you look at that map, lots of lines, real pretty, but not so much. Okay. First one. This is where we have all of the fracking sites in Colorado. This isn't all of them, but most of them. And what you see in the orange dots are the current fracking and oil gas bores. And what you see in the red dots are the producing oil and gas wells. So not necessarily all the oil that we have comes from fracking, but as you see, the majority of this oil and gas comes from fracking. The next thing that I want you to be this whole, as we kind of move through these slides, I want you to be thinking about where you are currently, and you can like check it off on your map and be thinking about, okay, what's in my neighborhood? And where are these concentrations? And a lot of times you'll see concentrations in rural areas and along urban corridors. So what do we have here? This is a whole melange of stuff. We have landfills, we have Superfund sites, brownfields, nuclear waste. We also have like mining areas as well. So there's just everything that the EPA deems contaminated. That's what's there. So you'll see that there's lots of concentration, sort of North Denver corridor as well. Okay, so the concentrated animal feeding operations. These are CAFOs. And I wanted to really point something out here. So this is Project Counterglow. And if you go, again, like you can go to their website, it's pretty cool. From a nerd point of view. So what this website does is that because ag-gag laws stopped the ability to know where actual facilities are, they actually stopped that information from coming out to the public. This nonprofit organization actually goes out and they use drone technology and they use Google Earth to find where these facilities are located. And if you click on one of these dots online, you'll find that it'll say it'll have a little pig or a chicken telling you what the animals they do actually store there, but then also an actual picture of the facility. And you'll also see some pretty disgusting retention ponds around there as well. So this is, if you ever, have time on your hands and you're entirely too cheerful and you want to be depressed a little bit, this is where you go. Okay. Okay, so land conversion to sprawl in Colorado. As you see here, you look over there in 1960, there's definitely a clear distinguishing mark between Denver and Colorado Springs. If you kind of, as you see right now, 2015, that's the closest date to us. That actually, you see it starting to creep closer and closer. Before, by 2040, we are going to have hardly any separation between Denver as you drive down 25 between Denver and Colorado Springs. It is going to be completely packed. And then what we see is the problem with this is that, we want to build, but the more that we transform natural landscapes into housing or the built environment, the closer we are to climate disaster. That's what happens. This is just breaks my heart. This rate of land conversion is faster than deforestation of the Amazon region of Brazil. That is a lot. So there's that. Okay, air quality in Colorado. These numbers at the bottom tell you how many days were elevated ozone days for the year. And what we see is obviously in that Denver corridor, we see way more ozone quality days that are elevated. So that is really we're getting choked out. That's the bottom line. We're the 7th worst air quality among 50 states. And I don't know if anybody read or was aware of it, but recently we had the worst air quality in the world. The whole world. Yep. And I just wanted to mention as well that the snowpack is decreasing, water, so we're getting to some dry points here as well. Hazard and critical land in Colorado. One thing that I wanted to mention here is when we're thinking about hazard areas, we're thinking about seismic activity, we're thinking about landslides, we're thinking about floods, we're thinking about all kinds of things. But fire risk is especially important and is really problematic because a lot of these new buildings that we're building, they're using really shoddy material that will go up like this. It's like toothpicks. It'll just be in fire in a minute. So they're not even really respecting the fact that they're building these fire planes in a way that is problematic. And as you see, the areas where the most critical risk is in the red, that is a place where there's a lot of people living. Isn't that great? And you can see at the bottom it says for Colorado, and you all will get this as well, but it has that we have 17% of our properties in the state of Colorado are at risk for going up in flames. More hazard areas and critical lands. So this is the Sterling floodplain area, and you can see in the kind of brown color in the middle, that is city, but then also all of those areas kind of outside that are gridded out, those get flooded as well. So we're deliberately building in places that are going to get flooded out. The inequity in Colorado, if you look at as far as our health outcomes, and that's just a matrix of a bunch of different things like asthma, headaches, all kinds of cancer rates. But the lighter colors are the ones that have the least amount of health risks, and the darker colors are the ones with the more. And you can see this is sort of a southern rural area. There's a lot of risks down there. Inequity in Colorado. Not a big surprise, low-income, non-white communities are disproportionately exposed to pollution. And across Colorado, more than 500,000 children experience health inequities that negatively affect their lives and undermine their ability to grow up healthy. Poverty in Colorado, if we look at child poverty in particular, in the southern part of the state and sort of in the urban quarter, you see Denver, and look at Denver. All proud, that little squiggly thing in the middle. It has one of the higher rates of child poverty. This shows you how, again, another layer, how people have chosen to fund schools. And as you know, Tabor is in our state, and Tabor affects a lot. And so the white areas, and it might not show up as white, but kind of peach areas, those are the areas that they said, we don't want a mill levy override. We don't want it. We're not funding schools, basically. And then the green areas are the areas that had mill overrides most recently, and the blue areas are kind of in the past. So they're like, some of them are like, yeah, we used to like school and funding school, but now we don't. And then the poverty in Colorado, it's really fascinating. If you look at the resort communities, over there, over to the left, there's that kind of almost rectangular, but has a little jot out. That's where Telluride is. So there's a lot of poverty near resort communities, which we have many in Colorado. And then homelessness. At any given day, there are 10,000 people experiencing homelessness in the United States. How do you play it? How do you play it?
It's 10,000 in Colorado.
Mm-hmm. Colorado, I'm sorry, yeah. I don't know, how do you play it? It just needs to play. Oh, maybe this? Mm-mm.
We can push buttons. Thanks.
Oh, I don't have any idea what I'm doing.
There we go.
No,
Oh, she wants to play that video. Yes.
I don't know where these come from.
Okay. Well, that's a good one.
And we're done, moving on. We will put the link up on the website and the video. No, it's fine, we're good.
Okay.
So don't worry about that, we will absolutely see the fabulous interactivity, but just not right this moment.
Okay, yep.
Because we want you to actually interact with each other
Right.
in just a minute.
So finally, so the mobility imbalance, that is really an equity issue. And Colorado mobility networks are really out of balance. Nearly a third of the population don't even drive cars. That's 2 million people. And yet we are really, really in love with highways. Why? We know why. I don't know where these came from. So finally, I just wanted us to kind of center ourselves back on the state of Colorado. This is sort of a beautiful picture of the topography, and imagine what we can do other than oil, cows, cars, all the other things that we saw today. Thank you.